tormenting these people who've been sitting here for 3 hours and have to go to the bathroom.
I'm sorry, I have to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back.
There's any number of places to start talking about this film, but why don't we start with the beginning for each of you? Do you remember the first thing you shot?
Oh, that's a good question. First thing we shot. We were in Los Alamos. We were in the desert on that incredible set. And I can't actually recall what the very first shot was. I can't recall. But
you blacked out with terror, is that what?
Emily doesn't even remember how she got here tonight.
You promised
But she's
me.
been microdosing quite a bit.
No, I haven't. And you always do this to me.
Said I wouldn't, and I'm sorry,
He
now
does
I'm
it
done.
at every Q&A. At the last one, he goes, guys, just be kind on her tonight because she's had 2 margaritas. I was like, I haven't.
like, just ask.
So it was the Los Alamos?
Yeah, we were in Los Alamos.
You were in Los Alamos.
I can't recall. I can't really. We did a lot of the stuff in the offices, which were actually built. The sets were actually built. So maybe it was one of the scenes with Groves, with Matt, and all of the guys in the office. I feel like it might have been one of those. It was. Yeah, I got thrown in anyway. So.
How about you, Emily?
Me?
Yeah.
No, the other fucking Emily that's here.
It's because I'm high. I'm so sorry. I know it's a very serious movie. Come on. This is I remember the first scene we shot was us driving in with the screaming child with me, right? I think it was that my first day. Oh God. I think it was the scene where we enter Los Alamos and I was handed a 2.5-year-old child, and all of you who have children know that's probably the worst stage to hand your child over to a stranger, and this poor kid like kicked off and there was like snot pouring out of his nose and he was so upset. And that's of course the take that Chris used because it just looks like I'm a terrible mother, which clearly she was. But then after that he was so exhausted he fell asleep on me. So I was like, Chris, look, it's adorable. And like he didn't use any of it.
He really did throw you guys into the middle of it, Robert. What was the first
Wouldn't it be great if
thing
the
you
credits were still rolling a half hour from now? That's how important this film is.
shot? They just finished.
Yeah. My first scene was the first scene that you see Admiral Strauss, and it's at the Senate confirmation hearing when he's walking in with the exceptional Alden Ehrenreich.
The reason I ask that is each performance is so intense, and it's such an involved process. It's such a dense script that I kind of wondered how you felt wading into that all-consuming atmosphere of your character. And I guess could we begin just how you found the physicality for each of the people you play? Because I don't know if you can tell, but the way the characters move and talk is very different from the way you guys are in real life. What was the process like of finding the way? Much more levity, but what was the process like of finding
I can't tell what he's doing, so I'm looking at you.
the way?
Do you want me to pull my chair up? Is that going to help you?
Yes. So it was a process to try and figure that out. It was very clear that we had to get the silhouette right for him because it's so iconic, and that was a process. I guess I had to condition myself into that shape, kind of, physically.
How much time did you have to do that?
Like about 6 months. But when you get into that particular shape, physical shape, then clothes hang differently, you walk differently, you carry yourself differently, and then you adjust to it. And he was always very, very self-conscious throughout his life of being frail. Mentally it's kind of like unstoppable, but kind of physically quite frail. So he was very, very. But then, as a result, he kind of used that physique to create this kind of the iconography with the way the hat and the trousers and the tailoring and everything. So we worked on that a lot with our amazing costume designer Ella Majonrick, and so I remember, and I've said this many times, but Chris very early on sent me a picture of David Bowie in like the Thin White Duke era as a reference, It made sense in a kind of an obtuse way. So it was a process. But I always think that you're never finished. You can't be fit. Right, I'm ready. You just walk on set and you've done it enough, but you're never finished.
Well, that's what I wonder. Does it change from that first day moving forward?
It's always work. You're always working. Well, I am anyway.
Can't speak for these two.
Oh, I mean, maybe people are finished. I don't know.
Emily, how about you? Her physical presence really changes dramatically from the first time we meet her, midway through the film, then that final scene in that little conference room changes yet again. You had to find a lot of different forms for Kitty, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I have to credit, the amazing team we work with as well to help us all watch ourselves physically transform in the makeup trailer. It was just extraordinary, that aging process and the clothes changed and everything with Kitty sort of deteriorates, as she becomes reliant on substances to probably numb out a lot of rage and festering regret. But I think, she was so alive and lethal as a character in the beginning, and she does sort of fall off the deep end, I guess, is the through the trauma of what he goes through, but also in supporting his career and boldening his career. And I think she was an amazing confidant for him and support system for him, but almost to her own detriment, like in the isolation and loneliness of Los Alamos. So it was fun to kind of explore that shift throughout her life. And I watched this actress from the 40s a lot. She had a really great voice, and she was like an ingenue in the beginning, and then by the end, she was like a really crazy cool old broad. And I looked at some of those videos of her, and I've never really said who it was because then it'll become a bit of a thing, but she was quite inspiring to me for it, just because you literally see somebody shapeshift over time,
Robert, how was shapeshifting for you? I spoke to your wife, and she said
Settling
when you
people.
started losing weight, she said, well, he's not that skinny. She was looking at comparing you to real pictures of Louis Strauss.
Right. Jeff Bridges said years and years ago, you got to be screen lean. I was like, what does that mean? First of all, that scene where Kitty decimates Rob, it's the fucking heart of the movie, I think.
Are you trying to
I'm not
you
deflecting.
feel better after saying I've been microdosing?
No, this is the part of the trip where you start processing, so I'm just trying to
Talk about yourself. Talk about yourself.
Yeah, and trust me, I know how to do that. But first I want to say that the first time I saw you, we're walking up to Chris's office, and I was like, oh my God, this guy's already fucking in it. And then we went upstairs, and there was this 70-millimeter print from one of the screen tests, and it's the quintessential one that you see of Cillian as Oppenheimer. And I said, Jesus Christ, I got to get my shit together.
So you got screen lean.
Screen lean.
Yeah, so then I thought, well, you do what all of us artists do. We go, this is about how much I weigh wet. No, but I definitely fell in line with that moment. And Ellen Mirajnik I hadn't worked with since Chaplin, and so a lot of it was the specificity of the costumes. And then you see the way Hoyta's even shooting the screen test. I mean, guys, come on, this is like a murderer's row, a dream of department heads and director and co-stars to work with. But you set the tone in a formidable way. You hosted the whole thing for everyone else. And then Emily came in when I was shitting bricks and hadn't started shooting yet, and she's, it's her. So imagine Emily Blunt coming into the makeup room to cheer you up a bit and let you know everything's going to be all right. And I was just like, she better be right. She's so beautiful. I hope she's not a liar.
And I was right. You had a good time.
100%. And it really was Matt who first came in, and he's, quintessentially Matt. So you're just like, how is anyone this genuinely happy at all fucking time?
Microdosing.
So, Cillian, were you in it the whole time? How do you plug in and unplug from a performance like this?
You kind of gotta stay plugged in, really. That's the way I've kind of always worked, particularly for the biggies. You know, you've got to just stay in it. And he, like Chris, works at an extraordinary pace. Whenever I say that, I have to like let people know that nothing ever feels rushed. Like when we're doing these scenes, there's always enough time to get it right. We never leave the scenes behind. But by the same token, like we shot the film in 57 days. Like he brings everything. Like you will be shooting something, and then you know work from next week will come into this week. So you have to be like, and I'm a bit of a veteran of working with him, so I kind of know. So you kind of like I had to know the whole script pretty much, and had to know it intimately, but also to the point where you know it was loose, if that isn't a contradiction.
When you know something really well, that's when you can sort of let go of it, right?
Yeah, I always like know it to a point of not, where it's still loose in the room. So you just it's not by rote, but it's still loose. But I still had to have the whole thing. But yeah, it's for me. It was just like the train left the station, and then you're just on the train, and it was nonstop and all consuming, but extremely exhilarating. You know, that's the way his sets are. And then these guys would come in, and it was just like just such a wonderful relief to be with them and to be doing these incredible scenes. And they were so amazingly kind and compassionate and just fucking tremendous in the scenes. So it was like it felt like being in a fever state for those 57 days. Yeah.
What was it like for both of you on a Nolan set? There's a lot of talk about how intense they are, and the pace, the drive, and the performance that he pulls out of you, that you work on together. What's it? How would you describe it to people who've not been?
I mean, I agree with Cillian. You know that that there's a focus. There is such a focus on that set, but through the focus, you get this freedom. You know, as an actor, because you just feel so protected and taken care of by everyone, and everyone has the screws tightened on them. So everyone is just like ratcheted up a little bit and vibrating at just like a higher level than maybe you usually feel on a set. It can be chaotic. You guys know it can sometimes be so many distractions that you have to kind of harness to get the work done. And you don't have that on Chris's sets. It's intense, but it's warm. He's accessible. He's funny. He's like, as Robert said one time, he goes, he's like a good dad. Like you've been on sets where you've got a director who's like a bad dad. And Chris is a great dad, and you just feel really, I just loved him. I really did. Loved him.
He's got gargoyles on both shoulders, And one is, if you show up here with an ego, you're going to be decimated. Yeah. And the other is, if you show up and are not ready to work your ass off and be on your feet for 12 and a half hours once you've gotten ready, then you shouldn't be here. So there's an expectation of us that we're professionals, that we're capable, and that we are dedicated in a way that is hard to describe. We all know this feeling where you're just like, this is my life, this is what I do. And then sometimes I think there's this bent, well, I've been susceptible to it, where you go. And then as you go and things get better and you get bigger, it just gets easier and easier. And he's like, that's absolutely wrong. I'll show you. You're like, fuck.
What was one of the 12-hour days, like the really intense working or reworking a scene for each of you?
Every day for Cillian, pretty much. I will just say, can I say something nice about you without, you don't even have to look at me.
Just go in tight on Cillian while he attempts
Yes, well, he just
not
withers
cringe.
and turns to dust. We realized, as the people who got to jetpack in and out of this movie, how unfathomably lucky we were to have Cillian at the helm of it. It's as you guys have just seen, the most monumental task that he did with humility and kindness, and he's the most quietly, beautifully conscious person of everyone else around him. And he's so extraordinary. And I think all of us thanked our lucky stars that we could just kind of jetpack in and out of this thing and work a few days, and then we were off again. And he just, so when you say, did he unplug? Never, like ever, couldn't ever. I think we could. I was like, let's get some fajitas in New Mexico. And like, Cillian's like, I'll be in my room.
It almost became a running joke, like, Cillian, you want to come out to dinner tonight and not eat? Because that was the other thing, is the sequence it was shot in. Chris is not a sadist at all, but he does delight in the people that he has long-standing relationships with, of like, I have something special in mind for Cillian.
What's something special? What does that mean?
Just he would even, like, you know, like he was like kind of pitching, like, you sure you're going to make the very emaciated scenes later? You know, it was like, dude, he's a cadaver, leave him alone. But it all really worked, and I think it worked for, 70 mil, all that. There was a moment where we're in the scene where the line is, there was no spy at Los Alamos. It's the only line in the whole script that is underlined and has an exclamation point at the end of it. And, I'm a bit of, contrary to popular belief, I'm a bit of a behavior, and there were... Behavior? Yeah.
I thought you said beaver in a weird way.
She's peeking. And I kept waiting. I was like, oh, he's probably saving it, and then he's going to do it as scripted. And it was that at that point, you had so many iterations, so many other scenes that you knew you'd already hit that beat somewhere, and you refused to do the very clear stage direction. And at the end of that day, I was like, he is not only individuating as an artist, but he has now gotten to the point where even Nolan has nothing to say about what his original intent was, because you are fucking Oppenheimer. And everyone there was feeling that they were doing scenes with Oppenheimer. I mean, you're so fun when you're not on set. And made it fun and kept it light for us. But I mean, dude, it was literally like, I've been in some pretty intense situations. It was fucking remarkable.
Would you like to respond?
No, please move on.
You know what, when before we started, you say, is there any questions you want to ask? We now know that the only question you don't want to ask Cillian is, what was the first scene you shot? Okay, good. We'll make a note.
Without setting him up. Yeah. It's a vast cast. I think it's like 73 speaking parts, and you said people get to parachute in or jetpack in and out of the movie. What was it like for you having different castmates? I guess it would be almost every day, given the pace of that 57-day schedule, right?
Yeah, but it was a total dream. I mean, who wouldn't want to work with it's the best fucking actors in the world. But it always felt...
We should give a shout out to the casting director, John Papsadera.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
Filled out the cast with capable actors.
Unbelievable. And, and everybody came to work, because everybody in the film, all of these scientists and all, like, from top to bottom, like, they were all people. He didn't amalgamate any characters, do you know what I mean? They all existed. And so everybody knew exactly who their character was, and everyone had done tremendous research. And the times that we were allowed to kind of extemporize a little bit and let it go a little loosey-goosey, then everybody just knew all the background to all of their characters. It was like improvising history. Do you know what I mean? And improvising from each of their own point of view, which was stunning. But for me, I wouldn't work that far ahead until I was told next week was coming into this week. But you'd be looking at the call sheet, and then you'd see all of these tremendous actors would be coming in, and it was I've never had a feeling like that, you know. And then each day on set, everybody wanted to be there to work with Chris, you know. And like Robert says, there was like the egos were not allowed. There was no trailers. There was no assistants. No video village. There's no chairs.
So that's real. There are no chairs.
There are
on
no
the set.
chairs.
No craft service.
But that is everyone was. It's about the work.
So what do you do when you're not in front of the camera?
It's rare. First, but you remember like remember that scene with Tom Conti or all that. Remember like we were sitting on just like
Yeah,
the
you were
ground.
you were sitting on equipment.
Yeah, equipment on the ground.
Yes.
But that was brief, you know.
What was funny is when I had the really old makeup on for the last bit with you getting the thing.
The old medal, yeah.
Yep. 3 crew members offered me a seat. Suddenly, I think they were concerned I needed to sit down. I was like, I'm still the same age. It's just.
Did they thought that you had just gone on in
3
years?
apple boxes that day to sit on.
But Chris doesn't sit down, you see. That's the thing. It's always the leader sets the example, and he doesn't sit down, and so
Doesn't sit down, and he has a little like tea cozy in his pocket too. He's got like a little thermos. Just a little note I thought you might appreciate.
What's in the thermos? Is it actual tea?
Yeah. I'm not going to have any traveling rumors from here. It's urine.
So we already talked about the physicality, but I'd love to hear about how you found the voice of your character, because their speaking manner is so distinctive. We'll start.
you go.
We'll start with Robert.
I ran these lines so often that they just created these kind of grooves, and I don't have a lot of experience with Shakespeare, contrary to popular belief. But it just became that thing where there really weren't many different ways to say it, or many different ways or places to put it, or whatever, you know? So I think a lot of it was just... And again, like, you know, people would say, like, so I'm thinking, should I do a bit of a voice? You'd like, no. Okay, well, I was thinking I might do a little bit of it. No, please don't. You know, it was a lot of less is not more. It's like less than less is probably still too much, because he knows that it's a sensitive medium, and that film is, you know, it's going to catch it, particularly the way he was shooting it. I mean, that was the incredible thing, too, is like, you've seen this. Lens is this big, and by the time I got there, it's like they bring out the IMAX camera, and Cillian just doesn't blink, and this thing comes by and goes, and he's just like, you're like, motherfucker, I'm startled. So a lot of it was just like, you know what, you know, it's that thing, particularly obviously with screen acting. It's just like.
But were you looking at any film footage or listening to recordings of Strauss? Were you trying to capture anything authentic about him, or just trying to capture your own
I think it was
version?
critical that Cillian be in the ballpark and nail it without being, you know, copying the guy. And so, but again, it was the way you did it, where you captured him without imitating, which is, you know, I think you really set the tone for everybody else, and then Chris just reinforced that. Like, this isn't everybody start doing their voices and their thing and all their, you know, a hitch and their giddy up and all that stuff. It was like, you know.
How about you, Emily?
I feel similar to Robert. I feel like I ran those lines a lot, and just to myself, and walked around the house like a crazy person, which I've realized I didn't know this, but we both do that.
Oh, that's all I do. Yeah.
I will just rent like an Airbnb for 3 days and just walk around alone and talk to myself like a crazy person, and then it will just materialize in whatever way feels good. And I think she was quite by design as well, a bit self-mythologized, enjoyed being a spectacle, and so the voice felt performative maybe as well for her, and I relish that side of it. I love it. I love getting to do something different from how I normally sound. So I watched this actress as well. I watched how she spoke, and she spoke at like a velocity, and that also was kind of interesting, you know.
Cillian, was there a key to finding his voice? Like Robert said, you don't want to do a straight up imitation or like a mimic of it, but
Yeah. Well, Chris, again, you know, like this isn't about the voice, but it'll give you an idea of how we approached it. Like Oppenheimer is the only person in the film that wears a hat, really, and you probably, you know, you don't. I don't know if you noticed that, but it's kind of subliminally, everyone fucking wore hats then, or all the men did all the time. And Oppenheimer's the only one that smokes in the movie. Yet at the time, everyone smoked. But these are the things that he decided were bang from the beginning. This is the clarity of his vision. You know, they go, right, this is how we, you know, the script is written in the first person. All these little details that make you see it through his eyes, or makes him stand out in a very, like I said, subliminal way. And then in terms of the voice, like he even then, his voice was unique for that time in history. He didn't speak like anybody else, really.
that was because he spent so much time abroad.
I think it was that, but also it was like rarefied upbringing. You know, high privilege, and he had very, very high notions of himself. You know, as a young man, and then of course he was traveling in Europe and all of that. But there was this sort of, it wasn't quite America, but it was period. And again, I didn't want to do an impression, but I wanted to do a sort of a synthesis of how he spoke and how Chris saw the character, and then obviously what I kind of brought to it. But it definitely was a voice, and I did spend hours, days, months in my basement walking around talking to myself and trying to get it to the point where you're comfortable. Because I feel like doing any sort of a voice, I don't know what you guys like, it feels to me it's always like going to the gym for your mouth. Do you know what I mean? So you have to keep doing it, and it's fucking tedious and boring, but you got to keep doing it, and eventually it sits in. And I remember the very first time I did for Chris, we were doing some camera tests. So scary, and he's just so casually. They're not recording sound, so he's like, just do the voice. I'm like, but the electricians are there. And but I did, and then it was fine, and he was, you know. Then eventually it's just humming. Hopefully, you know.
The film it moves backward and forward in time, at different eras in Oppenheimer's life. Obviously, every film is shot in out of order. But what was it like getting into the moment each time you had to get in front of the camera? Was there a session where Chris would gather with you and just sort of orient you into where this is in the movie? Because I often talk to actors who say, like, oh, I really didn't know like what the director had in mind when they were asking me to do this thing. And was that ever the case? Did you ever feel lost? And how would he keep you grounded in where your character was in the sort of normal chronology?
I think he's happy to explain it, but oftentimes he would just presume that you have had a look and you know what you're doing. I don't really remember him ever saying, Robert, let you tell what's happening in this scene. You know what I mean? And the other thing is, like, you know, there's all this, I mean, imagine it, right? Like, I think there's no one amongst us who doesn't imagine, doing a film with Chris Nolan. And then you think, like, oh, it might be really exacting, but there was I never saw a mark on the ground. Like, crazy. Like, so not judgmental, so loose, the blocking, just all that stuff. So
I mean, more fluid than that. It's
I think so. Yeah, it all seems like math, but there was a lot of jazz going on. And be like, even just for this one, it's pretty exacting. Your shooting goes, if they should really be able to get you wherever you go. So basically, anytime you'd be like, I kind of want to help this other department, you'd be like, no. No, that's on them to stress out about that.
I feel like he's turned into Richard Harris or something.
Yes,
it's amazing.
You know, Robert.
The last thing I'll ask is, when you were finished, what was it like to let go of this character?
It took a while. You know, I'm not really of the school of acting where you know you stay in it all the time. It doesn't work for me. For me, I like to feel relaxed, and in order to me, I think you need to be in it, You need to be as relaxed as you possibly can when you walk onto a film set or you walk into a scene. So that's why we had a lot of laughs, like off set, you know, because to me that's then I'm loose when I go on set, and it's and so therefore afterwards it's more that you've been doing something so intensely for all the prep and all the work, because you've been doing it so intensely at like 16, 17 hours a day, and then when you stop abruptly, you have an immense amount of displaced energy, and you're neither one thing nor the other. You know, you're neither the character, you're not a civilian, and you're not really welcome at home. You are, but they're like, everything is going fine. No, I have a very loving family, but it's just, I just feel, you know, when you come back, you're like, right, I've got to do something, and they're like, everything's done, it's fine. So therefore, you're suspended for a little while. I find that, and that's kind of extended on this one because it was such an intense gig. There was kind of an extended period, but I'm loath to make it about that was the method, or it wasn't. It's just, it's you're focused for an intense amount of time.
No, you live with a character for that long and that intensely. It must leave you with some kind of feelings.
It does, but only retrospectively. Never in the moment for me, anyway, personally.
Were you going to jump in and add something?
I was just going to say you did so right by Oppenheimer, dude. You did. Sometimes you wonder too, like when it's all over, particularly when you're playing a historical character. You're like, I hope I did right by this person, you know. And I think it's easier if you feel like you did.
It's a great place to end. Thank you very much for joining us, Cillian Murphy, Emily.
Thank you.
Much.
We're going to
Robert,
avoid getting COVID before the holidays, so we're stepping out. Thank you.